Sorry for the late upload today, guys. I had a very busy day. I was doing stuff for my film projects, went to a couple meetings for screenplays that I'm working on, and I got some really cool stuff on the horizon. Thank you, everyone that participated in the live stream last night, even though it made my ADD go crazy and it was hard to answer the questions. I need to get more organized with that. But everyone that gave me donations on the live stream, definitely appreciate it. It gives me more flexibility, and it helps me create content and put stuff out more because I can focus on this. I also got some GoFundMe money from Scott Epperly and Ryan Nelson. Thank you guys so much. And also I got the package of equipment from Jeremy today. So I'm going to start using that, and I'm going to start getting the production value better. Thank you guys, everyone who's loyal. Follow me. I also want to say I was wrong about Suboxone and the naloxone. I was misinformed. Doctors told me that. Go figure. Doctors love to propagate misinformation, but apparently just buprenorphine by itself can put you in precipitated withdrawal. I didn't know that. I was wrong. I stand corrected. Thank you guys for educating me on that. It's a very complicated subject, and the more information that we share with each other, accurate information, the better this whole thing is, because it's a life or death thing, and it's good to know and be educated about this kind of stuff. So let's get into the story. Where we left off last time, I was going down to Catholic services to fight Mike. The same Mike who was my cellie that, was my friend before this. Same Mike that I let get his teeth knocked out because I didn't jump for him when another race was beating it up. Not solid of me. Same Mike who had to take up slack because I pulled that move where I went on suicide watch, where I owed money to everybody and their mother inside my unit. Strike two on not being a solid convict. And I'm not a sex offender. I'm not a rat. And I've never left a prison owing money. But these were dope fiend moves that I really didn't understand the gravity of in the beginning of my term. I got much more involved with the prison politics, and I wanted to be solid. And, in retrospect, it's such a fake culture. It's ridiculous. Skinheads preaching white supremacy, listening to Lil Wayne. Stuff like that. It's like, come on, man. It's crazy. But when you're in that world, you have to adapt to it. It's adaptability. We talked about that last night. I became chameleonic, and I had to play the part while I was in there just for survival. I'm an upper middle class suburban kid from Santa Barbara. I'm not cut to go to prison like that. And I had to learn really quick that that was not for me, even though I went 3 times altogether, 2 times after this term. But prison's a fake culture. So Mike had every reason in the world to be upset with me, but I had to save face. I got called out. When you get called out in prison, you have to fight, period. You can't not do it. So the night before the fight's going to go down, Al, or Boots, let's call him Boots, that was what his nickname was. Boots is telling me, all right, man, let me tell you some advice, okay? When you get in a fight in prison, you take flight first. As soon as you see him, just take off on him. He's not going to expect it. You're an overweight, kicking methadone person that just went on suicide watch because they all think because of bills, even though my girlfriend had died. He's not going to expect you to come out swinging. So I knew that had to be my move. And I didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know if Negro Damas, I didn't know if Sharky, I didn't know if there was going to be a whole gang of people that were there to just jump me or stab me or who knows. But, I had this brotherly figure in Boots, and he guided me and told me what needed to be done. So we line up, go to Catholic services, get on the elevator, we go down there. Negro Damas is there. I see Mike right away. Now, when I had left 7 South, it was a bunch of decrepit, elderly dope fiends, as I've talked about. And Boots and I had talked about it. I'm like, well, what if, he said, what if he brings a bunch of his, Peckerwood friends? I'm there to back you up in case it's a 2-on-1 type of thing. But what if he brings a whole gang of people? I'm like, dude, these are the sorriest people you'll ever see. These are the sorriest people. And someone had commented, you're always saying bad stuff about your race. I'm about equality, and I don't pay favoritism to the white people, even though that's what I'm supposed to do to be a solid convict. That's not my thing. As years went on, I got more solidarity with my race because I knew that that was just the nature and dynamic of being in prison. You have to have the solidarity and you have to be loyal to the group of people that are going to back you up if you get in a bad situation. But, I told him this is the sorriest group of people, white people ever. I thought that, they were going to wheel in old Moses calling shots right out on his deathbed. But now there's like two pretty swole, big white guys. And they're like good-looking, tan, buff white guys. They look like lifeguards. They should have like a little dab of sunscreen and like a whistle around their neck. That's what these guys look like. Baywatch Peckerwoods. I was like, great, dude. So it's Mike, and it's like these two dudes. There's some Southsiders, Negro Damas there, and everybody has that look where they want to like murder me. Like right when I walk in, they all look at me, and I'm like, great. Boots is a big boy. He is one of the biggest white dudes I've ever met, and he's crazy. Scary looking guy. Big old skinhead from San Pedro. But still, I'm like, man, these two buff white guys that are with Toothless Mike, this could be problematic for me. My heart's racing. It's like when I used to go to keg parties, I used to do a lot of attention-seeking behavior in high school, so consequently, a lot of people wanted to beat me up in high school, and it happened to me at keg parties, and I would fight sometimes, and sometimes I'd win, and sometimes I wouldn't. But if I knew that I was going to get in a fight at a keg party, and I knew someone wanted to beat me up, my first instinct was just to leave the party. I didn't want to even be there. And I kind of still had that mentality, but I'm kind of, boxed in right now. Have to do it. So Mike starts walking towards me. He's got Baywatch Peckerwoods behind him. Right as he gets to me, he goes to start saying something, and I just go, and I just crack him. And I hit him in the ear. Bam! And it hurts. I'm not even used to, like, dope fiending people like that. And I'm like, and Boots is like, fight! Hit him back! Hit him again! Hit him back! Because, like, he's swinging at me. Gets me a couple body shots. He's like, take another shot at him. And I'm just, like, sitting there, like, I'm like, my hand. Like, thinking that, like, by, like, shaking it, that suddenly I'm going to feel better. Well, my little pause and me shaking my hand, I got tackled by one of the bigger Baywatch Peckerwood dudes. And now I'm on the ground and I'm getting jumped by the three of them. He jumps in, Boots jumps in for me. So this like brawl ensues, and it's, there's three of them, and it's Al and I, Boots and I. We're fighting. You just hear a CO go, get on the ground. And, like in prison, these things get pumped up in your mind, and then it's over in a flash second. And that's what happened. And before I knew it, I'm in cuffs. I'm leaking a little bit. I got a cut right here. One of those things where it's bleeding more than, I'm bleeding profusely, but it's not that bad of an injury. Head injuries just bleed, and I've gotten a million of them in my life. We have so many pictures of different head injuries that I've incurred while I've just throughout my crazy life. And we'll put all those pictures like in a slideshow in the documentary. But they take us away. They take Mike. They take the Baywatch guys. They take Boots, and they take me. And, of course, they separate us because they don't know what happened, who fought who. They don't know who to separate. So they bring us into they put us back on an elevator. We all take different trips. So we go one at a time up to the hole, that I think eighth floor. Go back to the hole. So they put us all in different holding cells, which are, I guess, comparable to like a drunk tank that you'd be in a county jail if you get arrested for the night. Just like a big cell. They put multiple people in there at once, but they had multiple cells like that, and so we were each in different tanks by ourselves. We're in there for like 3 or 4 hours. Lieutenant comes up to me and asks me what happened. And I don't make a statement. I've been trained not to do that. You never make a statement to lieutenants. I just go, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, do you need medical attention? I said, no. By this time, I'd used toilet paper in the cell to kind of like wad, to stop the bleeding a little bit. I wadded it up and stopped the bleeding. And that's ridiculous, man. I was leaking blood, and they're only asking me if I need medical attention 4 hours later. Sometimes that's how they do it in prisons. That's not what they should do. That shouldn't be protocol, but that's what they do because they don't really care. And Lieutenant says, can I sell you up with your old celly? Are you guys cool? I said, yeah. So, the last time I gone to the hole, I was with that MA dude. Now they have more openings, and they house Al and I together, Boots and I together. So I put us in the hole, and we're in there for, I want to say 10 days this time. And, I had to go see the disciplinary hearing again. Now remember, I'd already beat up Randy, and I didn't make statements about it, and it wasn't on camera, and he didn't make statements against me, so they couldn't prove it. This time, I punched somebody, and there were witnesses, like CO saw it. So I'm for sure going to get charged with it, and, some of the COs had come by, like, they walk by, and I'd ask them, I'd be like, hey, like, how much good time are you going to take? What's going to be the consequence? And it's like, if you get found guilty of the mutual combat, you're going to get like 30 days good time taken away. So an extra month in prison. But he said, but they can charge you with assault. It just depends on what other people say. If nobody makes statements, I can't get charged with it because we started fighting. But if someone says that I took off on them and they were just protecting themselves, then I can get charged with assault and battery. So I was hoping that that wasn't going to happen. And during the 10 days, sorry about these dogs, during the 10 days that I was in the hole, they forwarded my mail to me. And I got a letter from Jenny that she had sent like 2 months before. Sometimes in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I also ran into it in the California Department of Corrections, mail can take months to get to you. And probably because I was on 7 South, then I went to I went to the hole, then I went to Suicide Watch, and then I went up to 9 South. So I was being moved around. So this letter had tried to follow me probably the entire time I was getting moved around, but it finally made it to me while I was in the hole. And so, hey, stop arguing. And so, it was really crazy because she had passed away. And I get a letter from her. And so I read the letter, and it's really weird. It's the lyrics to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, with clouds drawn. Now, if anybody remembers, when I was, I want to say 19, before that guy burned me in Florida, when we were in Santa Barbara County Jail, some guy had come in with acid, and he sent some to my friend, the guy that ended up burning me when I was supposed to be picking mushrooms, and it was the same setup. It was this letter with the lyrics to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds with clouds. And I had told Jenny the story before, so I'm like, wow, did she send me acid? But it had her real name on it. It just didn't have a real return address, and she said Jenny Leone. She didn't say her real last name. So it said Jenny Leone, and it didn't have a real return address, and it wasn't even a letter. It was just the lyrics to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which obviously the acronym for LSD, with clouds drawn, just like I had told her, and just like I had told you guys, when I was in jail, someone had sent us acid like that. So I tell Boots that. I'm like, dude, this is from my dead girlfriend, and I think that it's acid. And he's like, did you already take some? I'm like, no, why? He's like, because you just told me your dead girlfriend sent you acid. I'm like, no. You don't understand. Look at when it's dated. And it was dated like sometime in July. We're in like late August right now. And he's like, do you really think that that's what it is? I'm like, I don't know. So we put it up to the light. We put these clouds up to the light, and these dogs are out of control. Hey! Shh! Wow, it actually worked. See? I'm intimidating. So we put this up to the light, and we see these clouds, and sure enough, there's liquid stains on it. So we think that acid actually got dropped on this piece of paper. And he says, hey, you want to take it? Now, we're in the hole in federal prison. The next day is going to be my disciplinary hearing. I'm already tripping about that because I could get charged with assault and battery, and who knows how much time that could be. That could be like years more. Plus, I haven't been sentenced yet. And this is like the second time I've been to the hole in like a month. It's not looking good for me. I'm already full of anxiety. And anybody knows with psychedelics, you have to be in... You have to have good environmental conditions for a hallucinogenic drug to have a positive trip. It's like required. It's absolutely required. I've had so many bad trips that we'll get into later. The last time I did acid a couple years ago, I had a horrible trip, and I'll tell you guys that story sometime. But I really didn't want to do it because I'm like, look, man, this is not the right time to do acid. Like, my girlfriend just died. I'm about to get sentenced to who knows how long. I signed a deal for 5 to 40. I'm in the hole, and I just got in trouble again, and I might get additional time. I don't think we should do it. He's like, well, I'm going to do it. And so I said, fine, I'll do it with you. I said, well, what if she put like a lot? You know, there was like 6 clouds. And he's like, well, we'll just each eat 3 clouds. We'll cut the clouds and we'll each eat 3. I'm like, what if that's like 20 hits? I don't know. Maybe we should just eat 1. He's like, no, 3. I'm like, and he's already, cutting the paper with his, he's like ripping it, like, he's like ripping the clouds out like this. And he just puts it in his mouth. And I'm like, God. So I do the same thing, and I put these 3 hits in my mouth, or who, God knows how much is in there. And it doesn't kick in after an hour. So he's like, this isn't acid. There's no acid on there. And I'm like, I don't know. That's what I thought. I thought because I told her the story about the time I did acid in jail, that she remembered it. And we had a bunch of acid at our house, so it made sense. And it was dated from, month before she passed away or whatever, whenever it was. So we're kind of just, he has the bottom bunk, I have the top bunk. He's older than me, and he's way tougher than me, so he can just have it. And, I'm laying in bed. I was probably, I don't know, we're just having a conversation, or maybe I'm telling him a story or something. And all of a sudden, he starts laughing. I'm like, what? He's like, I feel it. I'm like, really? I don't feel anything. He's like, yeah, man, it's kicking in right now. I was like, is it strong? He's like, yeah, I haven't done this since I was a teenager. He's talking kind of like a redneck. I haven't done this since I was a teenager, man. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I guess I'm kind of like, anticipating that it could be a very intense trip, especially because we're in the hole, which is just the worst condition ever to do acid. I don't know why I did that. I guess it's my problem with impulsivity that has plagued me my entire life. I always make decisions and then instantly wish I could, take it back. I instantly regret stuff that I do. All of a sudden, I start getting that copper taste in my mouth. That's always like the first sign of acid with me. It feels like you've been like sucking on pennies or something, and you can taste copper in the back of your throat. I've heard other people say that they have similar experiences with LSD. It's definitely what it does to me. I can taste copper, and then you start getting like the flutters. You get like these, it almost feels like butterflies, but it's a little more tumbly and heavy than like just fluttering butterflies in your stomach. It's actually like a tumbling sensation in your stomach. And so I start feeling that, and then of course I get the grin starts getting plastered to my face, and we start tripping. And at first it's innocuous, we're giggling, we're having a good time, we're kind of joking with each other, and remember, he's a skinhead. He has never preached racist stuff to me, ever. He has never, ever, ever preached racist stuff. But it was like as soon as the acid kicked in, it's like he's like on some podium, and he starts doing all this crazy, just spouting out racist, extremist ideology. And he's like, the Negroes were never meant to escape from the slavery. They were meant to be subservient to the white man. And I'm like, wait. Why are you talking like some scholarly old black man? You sound like Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. Life wasn't easy at Shawshank for Andy Dufresne. He was talking just like that. Some skinhead that has swastikas all over him, iron crosses, he's got 88, 1488, yeah, brother, white power, that kind of guy. And he's like, and then somebody taught the Negroes how to read. And I'm like, why are you talking like that, man? And he just has the face of a statue, right? He is the face of a statue. Now, when you're in the hole, in the feds, before you get sentenced to your disciplinary hearing, when you go see the DHO officer, before all that, you're pretty much on investigation. It's called dead time because it's not counting towards whatever time you get sentenced to in the hole. For example, like I've gotten a dirty drug test and I got 30 days in the hole, but I had to wait 30 days to see the DHO officer. So that 30 days before you see the DHO, disciplinary hearing officer, doesn't count towards the 30-day sentence. So you have to do 60 days. And so, but when you're in that dead time, even though it's not counting, it still counts towards your sentence. You're still getting credit for it for your actual sentence in the feds, but it doesn't count towards whatever disciplinary action they take. If they're going to give you 15 days in the hole, a week in the hole, if they're going to give you 30, whatever, doesn't count. But during that time, they let you have a radio. So we had a radio, and, you know, he's preaching all this nonsense. The Negroes have been on this earth much less time than the white folk. And I'm just like, dude, like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear you doing it in the Morgan Freeman voice. I'm over it. I just want to listen to music. Of course, I didn't tell him all that. I just kind of was like, hey, man, I'm going to listen to some music. Yeah, you know, we both had our own radios. These little, it's like a clear Sony this big. I love that radio. And it's like, you know, preset digitally. It has a little clock on it. And LA has a bunch of good stations. Listen to K-Rock. And I had all the stuff pre-programmed. So I remember I put the earbuds in, you know, and like periodically I'd take it off and I'd still hear like, and then they get cornrows. And I'm like, dude, okay, listening to music. And one of my presets is a hip hop station in LA. And I remember tripping so hard. Now, it started creeping up, and if I had to quantify it and say how much acid it was probably like 2 hits of blotter acid. That's about how strong it was, which is still pretty strong when you're in prison because you're not doing drugs every day, you're not smoking cigarettes every day, you're not drinking every day, so you're like more cleansed than normal. Your system's sanitized from just the nature of being locked up and having limited access to chemicals. So any chemical you do is going to be intensified compared to what it normally would be. And so I'm like sitting there off these 2 hits, I want to say. That's probably what it equaled. And I started getting in my head. I get like that on acid sometimes. I get introspective and I start thinking about my life. And one of the worst things that I ever think about is all the pain that I've caused my parents. Something that I need to face, but I work very hard to use drugs that offer escapism, whether it be heroin, which for me does it the best. It just numbs me. Alcohol does that. Cocaine, depending on how I'm doing it, if I smoke it or if I shoot it and I get the bell ringers and I'm so whacked out on it, it offers escapism. Marijuana, which I don't like. I do not like smoking weed, but it helps me. Sometimes I like that feeling better than I like reality. What I don't like is when you take a substance and it puts your life under a microscope. So I'm thinking about all the pain that I caused my parents. And they don't deserve it. They're great people. And they never did anything that would warrant or justify me turning out the way that I did. And I really have used drugs and alcohol so much to block that stuff out. And even when I'm not on drugs and alcohol, I find ways to distract myself. But when I'm on something like LSD or psilocybin with mushrooms or even, peyote, longer lasting hallucinogens, sometimes it takes me to that place where I become overanalytical and it gives me serious pain, which is good because it allows me to internalize my mistakes, make a conscious effort to correct them, and better myself. So there's therapeutic value, I believe, to psychedelics if you use them correctly. And so I start having this really bad trip about my parents, and I had him spouting off his racist hatred stuff. And so I'm listening to my radio, and it's like a hip-hop station. What song had just come out? I think that song Forever with Eminem and all those guys. Is Birdman on? I don't know. Whatever. That song came out. I think it was like 2009. And it had like just come out, and I remember listening to it and getting petrified that this skinhead would hear me listening to hip hop. And I started getting on some really weird trip about it where I got scared. I like feared for my safety in my life. I'm listening to the stuff and it's making me get out of my head about my parents and all the pain that I've put them through. But now I'm petrified that this like 6'4" neo-Nazi dude is going to hear me listening to hip hop while he's on his racist sermon. And so I'm listening to it because it's giving me peace and it's giving me solace. But at the same time, I'm really scared that he can hear like the vibrations and somehow he's going to be able to decipher that it's hip hop, and then he's just going to beat me up or smother me with a pillow and murder me. And I start getting on that trip. So it's like this tug of war. My parents, skinhead might hear that I'm listening to hip hop, take my earbud out, and then they started buying property in southern Alabama. And I'm like, oh my God. Everywhere I went, it was like a multifaceted attack from all fronts where it was just a nightmare. And then I started thinking about the fact that this was going to be the next 5 to 40 years of my life. Who knows what it was going to be? So I started having a complete psychedelic freak out. And I started screaming. And I put the blanket over, I'm like, ah! And I'm screaming into the blanket. And I'm on the top bunk, so he starts kicking it. Bah, bah, bah. And the vibration really freaks me out. I feel like it's almost like I feel like I'm in some sort of war. Like I can feel the vibration. It feels like I'm dodging different bullets and like missiles and stuff, going through this complete psychedelic shutdown freak out. And finally he comes up and he starts shaking me. He's like, are you okay? And I'm just like, ah! Because I'm looking at him and he looks way more ominous than he did before we started tripping. I'm looking at the swastika tattoos. I'm looking at the hatred that's just emblazoned on this guy. This guy is so about white power, white pride, and like hating other races that he has a portrait of Hitler right here. Swastikas everywhere, telling me all sorts of crazy stuff. And then on top of that, he's talking like Morgan Freeman. And as soon as he starts shaking me, I'm already screaming into the blanket. Now a guard comes up because he can hear that there's commotion going on because they do rounds so frequently in the hole. And he's like, hey, what's going on in there? And I'm just looking at him like, and Al looks back at him and he has the same wide eyes. And we'll get to the resolution of this in part 8 of my 5 years in federal prison. I hate to leave on a cliffhanger, but wifey made lamb chops, and I need to go spend time with her and my son. But I certainly appreciate you guys. Books on Audible, Amazon. My Instagram's RyanLeone85. If you can hit a contribution to the GoFundMe, helps me out. And I appreciate every single one of you. If you can't do a donation, share my videos. Help me expand the channel. I have a bunch of ideas, and I want us all to be close. Maybe we can like have an event sometime, a channel event, and we can all hang out, or, various things for the future. But I'm definitely about expanding it and making stuff happen. And I'm flattered and humbled by the fact that so many people are supporting me right now. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.